The Spanish Inquisition is one of the most infamous events in history, often misunderstood and shrouded in mystery. Many myths have been perpetuated over centuries about the true nature of the Inquisition, fueling misconceptions about its actions, methods, and scope. In this video, we'll separate fact from fiction and uncover the truth behind one of history's most controversial institutions. 1. What was the Spanish Inquisition? The Spanish Inquisition, established in 1478 by King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile, was an ecclesiastical tribunal aimed at maintaining Catholic orthodoxy in Spain and its territories. The primary goal was to identify and root out heresy, especially among recent converts to Christianity such as Jews, conversos, and Muslims, Moriscos, who were suspected of secretly practicing their former faiths. The Inquisition was a response to Spain's growing concerns about religious purity in the wake of the Reconquista, the Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. By targeting religious heretics, the Inquisition sought to consolidate power and unify Spain under the banner of Catholicism. 2. Myth 1. The Spanish Inquisition tortured people mercilessly. Reality. One of the most persistent myths about the Spanish Inquisition is the widespread belief that it was a time of brutal and unchecked torture. While torture was indeed used as a tool for extracting confessions, it's important to understand the context. The Inquisition followed strict legal protocols, and the use of torture was governed by the Church's canon law. Torture was allowed only after certain procedures were followed, and only for serious cases of heresy. The goal was not to punish, but to extract confessions, which were believed to be necessary for salvation. Torture, therefore, was seen as a means of spiritual purification in the eyes of the inquisitors. It's also worth noting that torture was not unique to the Spanish Inquisition. It was a common practice throughout Europe during this time. Though there were certainly instances of cruelty and abuse, historical evidence suggests that the Inquisition was less brutal compared to secular trials of the era. 3. Myth 2. The Spanish Inquisition killed millions. Reality. Another pervasive myth is that the Spanish Inquisition killed millions of people. In reality, the number of executions during the entire period of the Inquisition is estimated to be far smaller than most people believe. Historians estimate that over nearly 350 years, around 3,000 to 5,000 people were executed as a result of the Spanish Inquisition, a much lower number than commonly assumed. While this is still a tragic loss of life, it is a far cry from the millions often claimed by popular culture. It's also important to note that many of the executions were carried out for relatively minor offenses in comparison to the extreme punishments people expect from the Inquisition. The most notable execution was that of the heretic and reformer Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake in 1600. But these cases were relatively rare. 4. Myth 3. The Inquisition was focused solely on Jews and Muslims. Reality. While it's true that much of the Inquisition's efforts were focused on monitoring Jewish and Muslim converts to Christianity, it wasn't exclusively concerned with them. The Spanish Inquisition also targeted other groups considered heretical by the Church, including Protestants, witches, and even some Catholic clergy members. During the time of the Protestant Reformation, the Inquisition was also used as a tool to combat the spread of Protestant ideas in Spain. Spanish authorities feared the influence of Protestant reformers like Martin Luther, and the Inquisition sought to suppress any form of dissent that could challenge the Catholic Church's authority. In addition, the Inquisition was involved in rooting out superstition and alleged witchcraft. Women, in particular, were often accused of witchcraft and were brought before the inquisitors. These trials were often characterized by hysteria and were less about religious purity and more about societal control. 5. Myth 4. The Spanish Inquisition was uniquely brutal. Reality. While the Spanish Inquisition is often depicted as an institution of unique cruelty, it was not an anomaly in the broader context of European history. The Inquisition was part of a larger European trend of religious trials and persecution, which included similar tribunals in places like Italy, France, and Germany. In fact, the Spanish Inquisition was part of a system of inquisitorial courts that existed in much of Catholic Europe. The methods used by the Spanish Inquisition were largely in line with other inquisitions of the time, including the Roman Inquisition, which was equally harsh in its pursuit of religious orthodoxy. Moreover, the Spanish Inquisition lasted for several centuries, and its severity varied over time. During the reign of Ferdinand and Isabella, the Inquisition was particularly aggressive. But as the years passed, especially after the rise of the Bourbon dynasty in the 18th century, the Inquisition became less powerful and more symbolic. 6. Myth 5. The Spanish Inquisition was all about religious persecution. Reality: while the Spanish Inquisition was certainly focused on religious conformity, it also had significant political motivations. The Spanish crown used the Inquisition as a tool to consolidate power and strengthen the monarchy's control over its territories. For instance, the Inquisition was employed to suppress dissent and maintain political stability. It was also used as a means of controlling the growing influence of wealthy merchant families, as well as limiting the power of local nobility. In this sense, the Inquisition served as a political instrument for King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella's efforts to centralize power in Spain. Additionally, the Inquisition often targeted individuals who were seen as threats to the established order, such as intellectuals, reformers, and other nonconformists. 7. Legacy and conclusion: myths unraveled. The Spanish Inquisition has been the subject of countless myths and misconceptions, many of which have been fueled by sensationalized portrayals in literature, movies, and popular culture. While the Inquisition was undoubtedly responsible for the persecution of many people, it is essential to separate fact from fiction to understand its true nature. The Spanish Inquisition was not as brutal or as deadly as it has often been portrayed. It was a product of its time, shaped by both religious fervor and political ambitions. The Inquisition's true legacy is not just one of fear and repression but also a reflection of the complex relationship between church, state, and society in early modern Europe. By understanding the myths and realities of the Spanish Inquisition, we gain a more nuanced perspective on this dark period of history, which continues to have a lasting impact on the cultural memory of Spain and beyond. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll explore the historical context of religious persecution in Europe and how it shaped the course of history.